The Shadow Realm was on the verge of being cleared of its lingering beasts, but this time it wasn't Suho leading the charge. It was Gray, the young wolf, displaying its newfound ferocity and skill. Beru acknowledged Gray's efforts with a rare sense of approval. He encouraged the young wolf to continue honing its strength, emphasizing the importance of aiding the young monarch. Gray growled in response, its fiery spirit evident in its actions. As Suho watched the scene unfold, he couldn't help but chuckle at Gray's behavior. He noted how the wolf had grown into its role, adapting quicker than he had initially expected. There was something amusing about the wolf's primal sounds blending into its disciplined hunting. A notification from the system interrupted Suho's thoughts. It announced that the experience Gray had gained from hunting magic beasts would now be transferred to him. This development piqued Suho's curiosity. He questioned Beru, wondering if such a mechanism had always been part of the system. Beru examined the notification carefully. Though uncertain, he explained that it seemed to function similarly to the way experience gained by shadow soldiers was once directed toward the Shadow Monarch. Suho considered this new feature thoughtfully. While half of the experience seemed to be reduced, the idea of experience increasing automatically without direct involvement was groundbreaking. It held the potential to expedite their growth and efficiency in battles. Beru, ever the strategist, suggested making Gray the primary hunter in the Shadow Realm. Gray's instinctive growl indicated its hesitation, but its growing strength and capability were undeniable. Another notification appeared before Suho, revealing a status window. The system announced that Suho had met the requirements to obtain a quest. By defeating a specific number of magic beasts within the Shadow Dungeon, he had unlocked a new task. Suho studied the notification with interest. The idea of a daily quest intrigued him. It required him to hunt goblins within the Shadow Dungeon, and if it was truly a daily task, it meant consistent rewards for completing it each day. Beru, observing the notification, offered his insight. He speculated that the system's intent was to fully integrate the Shadow Dungeon into Suho's domain. To achieve this, Suho would need to cleanse it thoroughly, starting with the goblins that swarmed the vast area. The sheer size of the dungeon presented a challenge. Suho considered how he would locate and eliminate 100 goblins scattered across such a wide expanse. Then an idea struck him. Summoning his inventory, he retrieved a rare item he had obtained during a previous hunt, a horn flute. This artifact was once used by goblin centurions to rally their subordinates. Suho remembered its purpose and saw an opportunity to turn it to his advantage. Raising the flute, he blew into it, sending an echoing call through the dense dungeon. The effect was immediate. Goblins drawn by the familiar sound emerged from the bushes and shadows in droves. They charged towards Suho in unison, their chaotic movements a stark contrast to Suho's calculated plan. As the goblins closed in, Suho felt a sense of satisfaction. The horn had worked exactly as he had anticipated. Beru watched in admiration, praising Suho's ingenuity. To manipulate the goblins' instincts so effectively was nothing short of brilliant. Suho clenched his fists tightly, raw power surging from his body as he faced the relentless horde of goblins. Without hesitation, he charged into their ranks, his fists colliding with their jaws, each strike dropping them instantly. The overwhelming numbers didn't faze him. Activating his skill, Ruler's Authority, Suho unleashed bursts of mana that swept through the advancing goblins, scattering them like leaves caught in a storm. Though he fought with unyielding strength, a thought lingered in Suho's mind. The goblins were no longer a challenge for him, but their sheer numbers made them ideal for fulfilling the requirements of his quest. Determined to complete it efficiently, he raised the horn flute once more and blew into it. The sound echoed across the dungeon, summoning even more goblins. Their numbers grew exponentially, flooding the area like an unending tide. Suho welcomed the growing challenge. The swarm now matched his desire for a large-scale battle. He pushed himself further, going berserk as he tore through the goblins without restraint. His blows, enhanced by his mana, left trails of destruction, and the battlefield was soon filled with the cries of defeated beasts. When the dust settled, the ground was littered with the remains of his enemies. Suho stretched out his hand and commanded, "Arise." Shadows began to stir, rising from the corpses of the fallen goblins. One by one, they transformed into shadow soldiers, joining Suho's ever-growing army. The newly created shadows wasted no time. Alongside Gray, who fought fiercely despite exhaustion, they charged at the remaining goblins, tearing them apart with ferocity. After 3 hours of relentless hunting, the system finally acknowledged Suho's efforts. A notification appeared, signaling the completion of the daily quest. Gray, exhausted from the intense battle, collapsed onto the ground. ground, its body heaving with fatigue. As Suho surveyed the aftermath of the battle, a new notification appeared in his field of vision, signaling the reward for completing the quest. Curious, Suho examined the status window. He noticed something odd. The quest counter was still increasing, even though he had already hit the required number of goblins for completion. Beru, standing by his side, noticed Suho's furrowed expression and asked about the issue. Suho, now amused by the discovery, speculated that there might be a hidden feature within the quest. His curiosity piqued. He decided to see just how far the counter could go. Encouraged by Suho's enthusiasm, Gray growled in agreement and sprang into action once more. Together, they continued to clear out the goblins, pushing the numbers on the screen higher and higher. By the time they had eliminated nearly 200 additional goblins, another notification appeared. Suho's suspicions were confirmed. There was indeed a hidden aspect to the quest. With a sense of accomplishment, Suho began to claim the rewards. The first reward, status recovery, restored his stamina and energy to their peak, as if he had leveled up instantly. Suho realized its strategic value, considering how useful it would be in critical moments during battles. The second reward granted him stat points, which allowed him to grow even stronger. Suho recognized the rarity of such opportunities as his level increased, appreciating the potential to become more powerful through these daily quests. Finally, the system presented a choice. 2 random boxes, one blessed and the other cursed. The blessed random box promised to grant an item Suho wanted, while the cursed random box would provide something he needed. The distinction left Suho pondering. While what he wanted could be useless, what he needed might not align with his desires. After careful consideration, Suho chose the cursed random box, trusting that his needs outweighed his wants in this moment. The box opened, revealing a unique item, Vulcan's horn. Suho examined it and realized it was a pair of gauntlets, crafted with precision and imbued with power. Surprised and impressed, he recognized the practicality of this reward. He had often relied on his shadow soldiers as weapons, but these gauntlets offered him a dedicated tool for combat. After equipping the newly acquired gauntlets, Suho observed their unique abilities with interest. The gauntlets bore an inscription indicating a 30% increase in physical damage. Suho speculated that this value might rise with the number of demons he defeated. Feeling the weight of the weapon in his hands, he realized its potential but also its challenge. It was heavier than anticipated. Determined to maximize its utility, Suho decided to invest all his stat points into strength, resolving to augment the weapon further through relentless combat against demons. As Suho planned his next steps, a sudden notification appeared. It informed him of a shift in Gray's state. The once loyal companion's feelings had changed from admiration to fear. Concerned, Suho glanced at Gray, noticing the exhaustion in the creature's movements. Beru, ever vigilant, reminded Suho that Gray, unlike shadow soldiers, did not possess limitless stamina. Feeling a pang of guilt, Suho agreed it was time for a well-deserved break. Acknowledging Gray's limits, Suho decided to leave the shadow dungeon for the day. However, there were still unresolved matters to attend to in the outside world. Suho stepped into the light, his thoughts shifting to the guild connected to the Hyena Guild and the Reaper Guild. He recalled their name vividly, knowing they played a part in the chaos he needed to unravel. Beru confirmed the information as Suho contemplated where to begin his investigation. Just then, Suho's phone buzzed with an incoming message. It was from Ta Lim. The urgency of the text was undeniable. It was a plea for help. Without hesitation, Suho moved quickly, following the message's clues. His path led him to an abandoned station field in Seoul, a place cloaked in silence and unease. Lim waved frantically to catch Suho's attention. Relief washed over Lim as Suho approached. Lim explained the dire situation. He was scheduled to enter the dungeon that day, but none of the haulers had shown up for work. The absence was frustrating, and Lim speculated that the missing workers were likely off indulging themselves elsewhere, leaving him in a bind. Suho, sensing Lim's frustration, reassured him and offered to help. Grateful, Lim handed Suho a piece of equipment, a hazmat suit. Lim explained its necessity for haulers. Unlike miners, who worked in safer, cleared areas of the dungeon, haulers had to follow the strike squad closely. Their job involved carrying the carcasses of magic beasts, which posed several dangers, from potential attacks to injuries from sharp spines and needles on the corpses. Suho put on the suit, understanding its importance in keeping him safe during the task. Shortly after, the strike squad arrived, their leader scanning the situation with displeasure. The sight of only 2 haulers visibly irritated him. He demanded an explanation for the small hauling team, clearly unhappy with the situation. Lim apologized profusely, explaining that the assigned haulers were unexpectedly absent. The leader was not appeased. He reminded Lim of the hefty fees paid paid to the Reaper Guild as an entrance fee and issued a stern warning. If Suho and Lim failed to meet expectations, he would formally report them to the association, ensuring they could never work as haulers again. Lim, realizing the gravity of the situation, quickly assured the leader that they would do their best. Yet the tension hung heavy in the air as the leader expressed his disdain for what he called irresponsible people. Suho, observing the exchange, couldn't help but feel the criticism was misdirected. After all, he wasn't even the leader of the hauling team. Lim, however, leaned closer to Suho and in a low voice suggested something bold. Perhaps Suho could subtly teach the strike squad a lesson using his summons. As Suho followed the group toward the dungeon, his thoughts wandered. He analyzed the composition of the strike squad: 4 D-rank mage-type hunters, 4 D-rank combat-type hunters, and 1 C-rank healer. The healer, who seemed to be the squad's leader, stood out the most, especially with his domineering tone earlier. Suho's gaze briefly rested on Vulcan's horn, the demon-devouring weapon he had obtained from the cursed random box. He couldn't ignore the strange series of events that led him here. Lim reaching out to him for help at that exact moment, the dungeon owned by the Reaper Guild, and the peculiar feeling that these weren't mere coincidences. As the group proceeded, Lim cautioned Suho to be careful, pointing out how slippery the terrain could become. Suho nodded absent-mindedly, lost in his growing sense of unease. His instincts warned him that something far more dangerous than anticipated was waiting ahead in the depths of the dungeon. As Suho and the group walked through the dark tunnel, an unsettling atmosphere surrounded them. The hunters lit torches to illuminate their path, casting flickering shadows on the stone walls. The strike squad's leader called for combat readiness, instructing everyone to take their positions. The hunters moved swiftly, forming defensive formations with practiced precision. Ahead, magic beasts emerged from the darkness. They were lizard-like creatures, their glowing red eyes radiating menace. The strike squad leader called out to Suho and Lim, reminding them to stay close to the squad while collecting the carcasses. Lim muttered under his breath, clearly discontented with being so close to the front line. Suho observed the unfolding battle intently. The lizard monsters, while not the demon-type creatures he had expected when he obtained Vulcan's horn, provided a valuable opportunity. He carefully studied how the hunters coordinated their attacks, their roles complementing one another to form an efficient unit. Suho realized that watching their teamwork could offer him insights into combat tactics he could adapt for himself. As the hunters clashed with the beasts, Suho crouched in a shadowed corner, his mind focused on his own plans. Twisting the key he carried into the darkness beneath him, he issued a silent command. From the blackness, shadow soldiers began to emerge. 7 goblin warriors, their forms more distinct and powerful than before. His intelligence stat had increased, allowing him to command a larger number of shadows. The goblin soldiers stood at attention, awaiting his orders as Suho silently assessed their potential. He noted the battle skills they had likely gained from the numerous goblin commanders and centurions whose corpses he had collected during his daily quests. Meanwhile, the strike squad fought fiercely, their weapons cutting through the lizard beasts. The battle concluded with the creatures defeated, their lifeless bodies scattered across the tunnel floor. The strike squad leader announced a break, declaring that their hunting efforts were limited due to having only 2 members in the collection team. His frustration was evident as he remarked how the lack of support was holding them back. However, as his gaze shifted across the battlefield, he froze. What he saw left him bewildered. The corpses of the magic beasts had already been collected with astonishing speed. The leader's eyes widened as he watched Suho's shadow soldiers silently and efficiently carrying out the task. Stammering, the leader turned to Suho, demanding an explanation. Suho confirmed that the creatures were indeed his summons. Lim, observing the exchange, braced himself for yet another confrontation, suspecting that the leader might use this as an excuse to criticize Suho further. Instead, the leader's demeanor shifted completely. Overwhelmed with awe and desperation, he grabbed Suho's hand, pleading with him to join their strike team as an exclusive collection member. Promises of the highest salary flooded out in rapid succession, but Suho hesitated, firmly stating that he had no intention of continuing as a collection worker. Before the conversation could continue, one of the hunters let out a panicked shout, drawing everyone's attention. He reported that a human corpse had been discovered nearby. The leader's expression darkened as he rushed toward the lifeless figure. Kneeling beside the body, the leader confirmed it was indeed a corpse. Blue flames flickered ominously around the remains, an unnatural sight in the shadowy tunnel. Another hunter observed the details, noting that the victim had been wearing an accessory, likely a civilian who had somehow wandered into the dungeon. However, no reports had ever mentioned monsters capable of using fire in Seoul Station. situation, Lim turned to Suho, his voice heavy with concern. Suho's expression grew serious as he acknowledged the unspoken question. The sight of the blue flames triggered a memory, their recent clash with a peculiar being. Suho's mind raced, piecing the clues together. His gaze lingered on the flames as he muttered that this corpse bore the marks of a Mistborn. The leader stared at Suho with confusion as the term Mistborn sank in. He questioned whether this was a new type of monster, the kind that burned with blue flames. Suho nodded firmly, recounting how there had been a Mistborn incident at his university. Suddenly, the other hunters called out urgently, announcing more discoveries. One after another, more corpses were found scattered around the area, each shrouded in the same eerie blue flames. The sight unsettled everyone, but Suho maintained his composure and suggested reporting the incident to the association before continuing the hunt. The strike captain hesitated momentarily, weighing the situation. He acknowledged the oddness of the phenomenon, but concluded that these victims appeared to be ordinary people, not hunters. Confident in the strength of their team, composed of C and D rank awakened individuals, he decided to press forward. Relaying his decision to the squad, he instructed them to continue advancing. The hunters, energized by his resolve, responded eagerly, ready to proceed. But Suho was stunned by the captain's choice, questioning why they were continuing despite the obvious danger. His instincts told him the Mistborns were far more dangerous than they appeared. However, the captain asserted his authority, reminding Suho that he was the one who made the decisions for the strike team. He instructed the collection team, which included Suho and Lim, to handle the remains and then follow behind. Lim sighed heavily, his discomfort evident. The mention of Mistborn brought an unsettling familiarity, and he muttered his dread about encountering them again. Suho glanced at him seriously, asking if Lim had a skill for running. When Lim affirmed, Suho's gaze sharpened. He instructed Lim to flee immediately if things went awry, emphasizing the uncertainty of what dangers might lie ahead. With the orders given, the squad moved forward. Their steps echoed through the dark, ominous tunnel as the faint light from their torches flickered against the walls. The distant, eerie howls of Mistborns reverberated through the air, originating from deep within a hidden chamber. Inside, Mistborns were restrained by ropes, their forms flickering with blue flames, their agony evident in their growls. Watching over them were three other beasts, distinct from the Mistborns. One of the beasts muttered with frustration about the fire's weakness, addressing its companions. It pointed out ongoing problems with their supply of firewood, a critical resource for their operations. The second beast explained that the Hyena Guild, which had been their primary supplier, was facing difficulties. The flow of supplies had been disrupted, and without it, their stardust production was plummeting, falling far behind other factories. Suddenly, the third beast stiffened, its sharp senses picking up an unusual presence from above. It growled, identifying humans as the source. It suggested that the intruders could solve their current resource problem. Without delay, it declared its intent to confront the humans and instructed its companions to prepare an offering and summon their comrades for reinforcements. The second beast reminded it of the need to capture the humans alive, a directive the third beast acknowledged with a confident nod. Gripping its sword tightly, it began dragging the blade across the chamber floor, following the presence it had detected. Meanwhile, the hunters advanced swiftly through the tunnels, cutting down any magic beasts that dared to cross their path. The air was filled with the clash of weapons and the growls of dying creatures. The leader of the squad, thrilled by the treasure they had collected so far, grinned with satisfaction. This hunt, in his eyes, was proving to be exceptionally rewarding, promising wealth and success. One of them remarked that pushing forward had been the right decision, and the squad leader nodded in agreement. With a confident smile, he pulled a small glowing stone from his pocket. This was no ordinary object, it was stardust, a rare and highly sought after mana amplification stimulant. It had been creating waves in the hunter world, known for temporarily increasing the power of lower ranked awakened hunters, even elevating their rank. The squad leader explained its effects, mentioning how its use could grant him the mana capabilities of a C rank or higher hunter for a limited time. The team was amazed, astonished that the squad leader had been holding on to such a treasure. But as the squad admired the shimmering stone, danger crept closer. From the shadows, a hulking beast emerged, silent and deliberate. Its predatory presence loomed behind the unsuspecting squad leader. In a flash, the beast drove its sword into the squad leader's back, the blade piercing through him with deadly precision. Blood gushed from his mouth as he stumbled forward, frozen in shock. The beast spoke in broken words, muttering to itself about the need for live prey. The glowing stardust slipped from the squad leader's hands, shattering into countless fragments as it hit the ground. One of the hunters rushed to his aid, panic overtaking him as he tried to process what had just happened. The squad froze in horror. The realization that the beast could speak sent chills down their spine. Snapping out of their shock, the hunters quickly rallied themselves, recognizing the danger they faced. The beast, undeterred by their preparations, coldly surveyed them. Its sharp eyes darted across the squad, sizing them up. It counted their numbers, deciding that most were not worth its effort. It concluded that only the strongest deserved its attention. With a chilling calmness, it raised its sword again, marking its next targets among the group. The magic beast reached into its pocket and retrieved a glimmering stone, stardust. The hunter's eyes widened in disbelief. They had never imagined a monster capable of consuming stardust, a stimulant known for amplifying mana and power. As the beast casually placed the stone in its mouth, its action sent shockwaves through the squad. Realizing the imminent danger, the hunters acted quickly. They surged forward in unison, determined to strike before the effects of the stardust could amplify the beast's strength. Their attacks came from all directions, but the beast moved with unnatural speed and ferocity. With the stardust taking effect, the monster became an unstoppable force. It slashed through the group, its blade cutting through flesh with ease. Blood splattered across the walls and agonized cries echoed in the darkness. The air became thick with the metallic scent of blood, and the battlefield was transformed into a grim scene of chaos. In the frenzy, the beast became nearly invisible, its movements too swift for the hunters to track. Panic spread among them as they realized they were powerless to stop it. The darkness felt oppressive, and their disoriented screams were silenced one by one as the beast tore through them. When the onslaught ended, the squad was annihilated. The magic beast, unaffected by the carnage it had caused, grabbed the limp body of one of the fallen hunters, referring to the body as firewood. Without hesitation, it began dragging the corpse back to its lair. Elsewhere, Suho, unaware of the calamity, received a sudden notification. A system alert informed him of a new quest. It instructed him to rescue survivors, revealing that people nearby had been captured by a demon. The quest emphasized urgency, promising greater rewards the more lives he saved. The term demon made Suho's mind race with possibilities and concerns. Before Suho could process further, Beru materialized from the shadows. Sensing Suho's tension, Suho warned the other hunters in his group, urging them to leave the dungeon immediately. His instincts told him that something terrible had happened to the strike team. Though confused by Suho's urgency, the hunters trusted his judgment. Lim hesitated briefly, concerned about Suho staying behind, but ultimately agreed to leave and seek help from the Hunter Association. Suho, however, resolved to face the danger alone. As his companions hurried toward the dungeon's entrance under the goblin's guidance, Suho steeled himself for the task ahead. Suho called out to Gray, summoning his trusted ally. Emerging from the shadows, Gray roared in acknowledgement. Suho activated the bond skill, merging with Gray in a seamless transformation. His appearance changed dramatically as he donned the Vulcan gauntlets, emanating an otherworldly aura of power and determination. With a light tap of his foot, Suho dashed toward the lair with remarkable speed, his resolve clear. There was no time to waste. The tunnels grew increasingly sinister as spiderwebs spanned the narrow paths, thick and sticky, a testament to the dangers ahead. Meanwhile, the magic beast returned to the lair, dragging the bodies of the hunters behind it. The task it had taken upon itself was complete. Tossing them onto the ground, it announced with chilling satisfaction that the firewood had been obtained. The second beast acknowledged its swift return, commenting that their preparations were nearing completion. The first beast, standing tall and overseeing the operation, mentioned the impending arrival of demons through the soon-to-open gate. It was a moment they had been eagerly anticipating. The third beast, ever eager to prove itself, spoke of its quick victory and readiness for the next task. The first beast in turn ordered the arrangement of the firewood, declaring it a fitting commemoration of the third beast's success. Despite some reluctance, the third beast complied, begrudgingly accepting the task. The first beast, holding a glowing piece of stardust between its claws, began to reflect on their progress. This stardust, a powerful stimulant derived from demon techniques, had become their most prized creation. It explained that the poison they were crafting, combining demonic secret methods and the potent berserk poison, had remarkable properties. While the original Berserk poison could enhance magical power, it came at the cost of the user's life force. However, with the innovative flames from the Mistborns, the deadly side effects of the demonic essence crystal's combustion had been significantly reduced. The first beast credited this success to the guidance of the Apostle. It revealed how the Apostle's knowledge had revolutionized their production, enabling even low-ranking demons to grow stronger. The corrupted creatures they created, stripped of rationality and turned into monstrous entities, were also a result of the Apostle's influence. The third beast, now arranging the firewood, voiced its agreement. The air in the lair suddenly grew tense as the beast's instinct screamed that something was approaching. The first beast, keenly aware of its surroundings, sensed a presence closing in rapidly. It questioned whether there were still hunters left alive to pose a threat. The third beast, ever cautious, suggested the intruder might be a new hunter, likely formidable. Their gazes turned to the entrance, bracing for whatever was coming. Moments later, the door shattered and flew inward with a thunderous crash. The force was immense, and the flying debris struck one of the beasts, slamming it hard against the ground. Suho stepped in, his presence commanding as he surveyed the scene. His sharp eyes caught the sight of Mistborns tied up at the back of the lair, their bodies burning as part of some sinister ritual. Relief flickered in his mind as he realized the survivors were still alive. However, the grotesque scene fueled his anger. Before Suho could act further, one of the beasts wasted no time and swung its sword at him. Suho effortlessly dodged, his movements sharp and precise. Without hesitation, Suho retaliated, his fist rolling into a devastating punch that sent the beast flying. The remaining beasts were shocked at Suho's speed and skill, muttered among themselves that their youngest, even enhanced by Stardust, had been no match for this hunter. They decided to act together. Consuming Stardust, their bodies surged with raw energy, and they gritted their teeth in determination. The trio launched a synchronized attack, their combined strength forming a united front. The lair echoed with the sounds of clashing blows and weapons. Suho, however, was unyielding. With incredible agility, he dodged their strikes, countering each attack with precision. His movements were almost otherworldly, evading their onslaught while striking back fiercely. But the Stardust's effects began to manifest fully. A crackling, electrifying energy surged through the demons, amplifying their power further. One of the beasts from a distance unleashed a concentrated burst of this energy towards Suho. The spell struck him, the electrifying force rooting him in place. Suho's body froze, unable to move, and he struggled even to speak. In that moment, Suho summoned his inner strength. His lips finally parted, and he uttered the command, "Arise." Dark shadows erupted from the ground, swirling with a menacing aura. Suho's shadow soldiers emerged in full force, their forms sharp and intimidating. Among them were shadow goblins, who instantly charged at the demons with ferocity. Their sudden assault momentarily broke the demons' momentum, buying precious time for Suho to recover. The demons stood frozen in disbelief as the shadow soldiers emerged. Seizing the moment of distraction, Suho struck with precision and power, landing a devastating punch that hurled one of the demons violently out of the space they stood in. The sheer force of the blow left the remaining demons regrouping, shaken but quickly rallying to reassess the situation. They exchanged wary glances, recalling memories they wished to forget. The authority radiating from Suho's shadow soldiers resembled a power they had seen before, the power of the Shadow Monarch. Yet despite its likeness, they noticed the difference. This presence lacked the overwhelming might they feared from the Shadow Monarch. Steeling themselves, the demons unleashed their wrath, slicing through Suho's shadow soldiers with a single swing of their blades. Their confidence surged as they rationalized their fear away. To them, if Suho wasn't the true Shadow Monarch, there was no reason to be intimidated. Suho remained calm, calculating his next move as he observed their teamwork. Individually, these demons were weaker than Braki, the mighty beast he had once faced. However, their combined strength posed a real challenge. Reviving the shadow goblins repeatedly was draining his mana, and he realized this approach wouldn't last. He pondered his options, questioning whether it was time to use his contingency plan. Suho's thoughts drifted back to a conversation he had with Beru. The loyal shadow had once explained the limitations of shadow soldiers. They grew weaker the longer they stayed in death, their memories and strength fading. Suho had chosen to keep Braki's corpse intact, sensing its potential. He recalled the regret he had seen in Braki's final moments, a creature controlled and stripped of its honor by the Itarim. Suho believed that if given the chance, Braki might fight fiercely, driven by the desire to reclaim his dignity. But for this plan to work, Suho needed permission from Gray, his steadfast companion. With a solemn nod, Gray agreed, his silent understanding affirming Suho's decision. Suho summoned the key of the shadow dungeon, twisting it on his own shadow with precision. The command rang clear in his voice as he activated his authority. "Arise!" Shadows coiled around Braki's lifeless body, surging with an ominous energy energy. Slowly, the beast's form reanimated, its figure darkened yet brimming with purpose. With a deafening thud, Brocky's transformation into a shadow soldier was complete. Brocky stood tall, his massive form radiating an aura of primal power. The markings of his rank, level 1, normal, did not diminish the impact of his arrival. His roar echoed through the lair, a declaration of his return to the battlefield. The demons were stunned, their confidence shaken once more. They recognized Brocky immediately, unable to comprehend how Suho had defeated such a formidable beast in the past. Suho's sharp gaze shifted between his allies, himself, Gray, and Brocky. Their numbers now matched those of the demons, and Suho felt the scales of the battle tipping in his favor. With resolve blazing in his eyes, Suho leapt into the fray. The battle raged on, shadow and demonic power clashing in a relentless storm of strength and strategy. Amid the chaos, a figure emerged, her presence commanding and unyielding. She stood at the edge of the battle, her sharp gaze analyzing the scene. The conflict before her sparked curiosity and unease as she tried to decipher the source of her summoning. The Shadow Soldier's presence added to her suspicion, her mind racing with thoughts of whether a demon was behind this, perhaps seeking her life. Meanwhile, Suho pressed his advantage against the demons. Their frenzied attacks came relentlessly, blades slicing through the air, but his unmatched agility allowed him to evade their every move. The Vulcan gauntlets he wielded deflected their strikes, their enchanted surface shining faintly with his resolve. Seizing an opening, Suho drove his knee into the face of one demon with devastating force, eliciting a guttural growl of pain as the creature staggered back. Sensing victory, Suho leapt forward to finish him off. He saw an opportunity to eliminate one of his enemies and even the odds. But just as he closed in, another demon intervened, unleashing a surge of electrifying energy infused with stardust. The raw power halted Suho's attack, forcing him to retreat momentarily. Frustration flickered in his expression as the battle grew more complicated. The demons worked seamlessly together, their cohesion making them formidable opponents. Suho noted their strategy, each demon compensating for the other's weaknesses. The youngest among them, now infused with the stardust energy, became even more dangerous. His mind raced with calculations. Gray's possession was draining his mana rapidly, and Brocky, now a shadow soldier but weaker than his original form, was nearing his limits. Brocky's strength had been focused on holding back one demon, leaving Suho to contend with the others. It became clear to him that if the fight continued at this pace, he would soon be out of mana. The only path to victory lay in splitting the demons apart, breaking their coordination so he could take them down one by one. As Suho strategized, the mysterious figure strode confidently into the middle of the battlefield. Her presence interrupted the combat as all eyes turned toward her. The demons momentarily halted, their wariness clear, while Suho's focus shifted, trying to understand who this intruder was and why she had stepped into such a dangerous scene. Finally, the figure's presence became clear. It was Esil. Without hesitation, she voiced her purpose, seeking none other than Sung Jinwoo. Suho's eyes widened in surprise as he processed her words. A wounded female knight had appeared amidst this chaotic battle, and she was looking for his father. Questions swirled in his mind. Who was she, and why was she here? Beru, equally astonished, recognized Esil instantly. His tone carried a mixture of surprise and familiarity as he addressed her. Esil, in turn, turned toward Beru, her expression lighting up with delight. A sense of nostalgia overcame her as she recognized the familiar voice. She chuckled warmly, embracing Beru with genuine joy despite his current form. Her happiness overflowed as she questioned him, eager to learn where Sung Jinwoo was and curious about Suho, the unfamiliar human in their midst. Beru, slightly flustered, began to explain the situation, hinting that there was much to recount. However, the reunion was cut short as danger loomed nearby. In the distance, the demons watched the scene unfold. Their sharp senses picked up on Esil's unusual demeanor. Her presence was an anomaly, especially given her apparent connection to their enemies. Her involvement had the potential to complicate matters for the demons, and they deliberated their next move carefully. Esil, oblivious to the demons' plotting, expressed her relief at finding Beru. To her, his presence signified that all was not lost. However, Beru, recognizing the urgency of the battle, urged her to set aside their reunion for now and deal with the immediate threat posed by the demons. The youngest demon wasted no time charging toward Esil with bloodlust in his eyes. He targeted her with the intent of harvesting her blood for their sinister purposes, viewing her as little more than a resource for their stardust. Suho observed Esil carefully. There was something familiar about her, though he couldn't immediately place where he had seen seen her before. Turning to Beru, he voiced his concern about her injuries, questioning whether she could handle the demons on her own. Beru quickly reassured him, explaining Esil's formidable strength. According to Beru, Esil was no ordinary demon. She hailed from the Radiru household, a noble lineage spared by Sung Jinwoo during his conquest of the demon world. Her abilities were extraordinary, comparable to that of an S-rank hunter in human terms. This revelation widened Suho's eyes in astonishment. The idea of witnessing an S-rank in action intrigued him, and he eagerly awaited the opportunity to see her fight. But what happened next shocked them both. As the youngest demon launched his attack, Esil failed to evade or block in time. The strike was brutal and precise, sending her sprawling to the ground with a heavy thud. Suho and Beru were taken aback, their disbelief written clearly on their faces. Esil, who was said to possess the strength of an S-rank, had been struck down with shocking ease. How could someone so powerful be brought to this state? Beru, observing her pitiful condition, was filled with disdain. His sharp gaze assessed her, noting the faint traces of mana that seemed far weaker than what he remembered. Tears welled in Esil's eyes as she confessed her struggles. She explained that half a year ago, chaos had erupted in the demon world. A rebellion broke out, and the noble households fought valiantly to restore order. However, her household, the Radiru family, couldn't withstand the overwhelming force of their enemies. The rebellion crushed their defenses, and while others sacrificed themselves to ensure her survival, Esil had been gravely weakened. Her blood had been stolen during her escape, robbing her of the strength that once defined her. In desperation, she turned to Beru for help, pleading for his power to aid her. Beru scoffed at the request, his tone laced with irritation. He saw her current state as unworthy of such generosity. Esil, hurt by his response, could only lament how harsh he had become. Suho observed the exchange, his thoughts weighed down by the realization that Esil was not the only one who had lost her strength. Between Esil and Braki, Suho now had two allies who were shadows of their former selves. The demons, watching the interaction unfold, grinned maliciously. Their sharp senses had confirmed Esil's weakened state, and one of them finally recognized her. To think that a survivor from the Radiru household, a noble demon bloodline, still lived. It was an opportunity too good to pass up. If they could consume the blood of a demon noble, their power would grow exponentially. The prospect ignited a fierce hunger within them. Suho strategized as he watched the demons prepare to attack. If he could separate them and fight one-on-one, he was confident he could take down at least one of them, but two together were too much to handle while his mana reserves were limited. Beru, ever resourceful, came up with a plan. Turning toward Esil, he decided to take action despite his earlier reluctance. With a burst of his shadow power, he used a skill that bolstered Esil's abilities. A system notification confirmed his decision that Beru had used the skill Harsh Orders, which increased Esil's stats by 50%. The effect was immediate. Esil's posture straightened, and an undeniable surge of energy coursed through her. Renewed determination blazed in her eyes, and she let out a fierce cry as she charged at the demons. Suho couldn't help but watch her transformation with mixed emotions. Despite her newfound strength, there was something slightly pitiful about the way she fought. Still, he knew this was their chance. If Esil could hold the demons' attention, they could turn the tide and create the one-on-one scenario he needed. Braki joined the fray with fierce determination, throwing himself at one of the demons to keep it occupied. Meanwhile, Esil focused her attacks on another opponent. She hurled her spear with immense force, but the demon countered with a defensive wall, effortlessly blocking her assault. The third demon seized this moment to strike, slashing Esil from behind with precision. Blood spilled from her wound as Esil let out a guttural cry of pain. The demon sneered in triumph, believing he had secured the valuable blood of a demon noble. However, Suho didn't let this opportunity slip. With a burst of speed, he dashed into the chaos. Leaping high into the air, he brought down both of his elbows, protected by the Vulcan gauntlets, directly onto the demon's head. The impact sent the demon flying like a missile, crashing violently into a nearby wall. Suho wasted no time. Following the demon's path, he delivered a decisive streaking blow that split the demon's face in two. The creature let out a bellow of agony before succumbing to its end. As Suho stood amidst the aftermath, a system notification appeared before him that you have killed a low-ranked demon and leveled up. Esil, fueled by sheer willpower, forced herself back to her feet despite her earlier injury. Her teeth clenched in frustration and determination, and she charged forward to rejoin the battle. The second demon, realizing what had happened, froze in disbelief. His youngest ally had fallen, and panic began to creep into his voice. Esil's relentless advance left him on edge, but her burst of energy didn't last long. A sudden wave of weakness overcame Esil as her strength faded. A notification appeared that the target of the skill has used up her energy. The effect has ended. Her body collapsed to the ground, drained and unable to continue. The demon, demon, sensing his chance to eliminate her, moved in for the kill. But before he could act, Suho appeared behind him, swift and silent like a shadow. With an unrelenting grip, Suho caught the demon in a headlock and twisted with brutal force. The demon's body crumpled lifelessly to the ground. Suho stepped back, his breathing steady as he assessed the situation. With two demons down, his voice rang out in determination. The last demon standing felt the tide shift entirely against him. His once confident stance faltered as he realized the advantage was gone. Now they were the ones at a disadvantage, outnumbered and outmatched. Frustration and anger filled his gaze as he muttered bitterly about his fallen comrades, but he wasn't ready to give up yet. Brocky, with unwavering determination, charged at the remaining demon, but to his surprise, the demon dashed away, ignoring the massive beast entirely. His focus had shifted. He was targeting Esil. The demon's thoughts raced as he stretched his hand toward her, craving the power he believed her noble blood would grant him. The demon's desperation was palpable. He needed the strength that only the blood of a demon noble could provide. Just as his hand was about to reach her, Suho intervened with lightning speed. His foot came crashing down on the demon's outstretched hand, stopping him in his tracks. Suho's gaze was cold and firm as he stared directly at the demon, making it clear there would be no escape. Without hesitation, he called out to Brocky. The massive creature lunged forward, jaws wide open, clamping down on the demon with brutal force. The demon struggled, but Brocky's sheer strength ensured there was no chance of survival. In the distance, Esil, regaining her consciousness, stirred and attempted to rise. Though her body was weak, her mind was sharp as she assessed the scene unfolding before her. Beru approached her, his tone sharp as always. He remarked on her condition before subtly urging her to look closely and recognize the truth about Suho. Esil's thoughts began to race. Her disbelief at seeing another human capable of wielding shadow soldiers mingled with Beru's hints, pushing her toward a realization. Then it struck her, a sudden, overwhelming recognition of who Suho truly was. Meanwhile, as the demon's life faded, a notification appeared before Suho. He had killed a low-ranked demon, and his level had increased to 20. With this new milestone, he gained access to the system's store purchase feature. Esil, now fully aware, could no longer deny the truth staring her in the face. The reality of Suho's identity sank in deeply. Her voice trembled as she acknowledged it to herself. He was no ordinary human. He was the young monarch. As Suho stood amidst the aftermath of the battle, Esil's faint voice reached him. Her words carried confusion, yet recognition, as she admitted how different he appeared now, resembling Sung Jinwoo in an uncanny way. Before Suho could respond, Esil's strength gave out and she collapsed. Concern crossed Suho's face as he turned to Beru for answers. The Ant King, with a calm demeanor, examined her condition carefully, almost like a seasoned medic. Beru reassured Suho that she had simply fainted from exhaustion. Though battered, she wasn't in critical danger. Relieved by this news, Suho let out a quiet sigh, his worry momentarily eased. Beru didn't waste time. He moved swiftly to heal the unconscious hunters who lay scattered across the battlefield, their bodies broken but their lives spared. As Suho watched over the survivors, a notification appeared in his vision, signaling the completion of his quest. The system confirmed that all 7 survivors had been rescued. Along with the confirmation came a reward: 700 gold coins. Suho reviewed the notification with interest, his thoughts drifting momentarily. Accessing the store window, Suho's mind filled with nostalgia. Browsing through the items, including various potions and other supplies, he likened the process to his younger days. Back then, finishing errands for his father had earned him pocket money, much like completing quests now brought him rewards. A light smile crossed his face as he silently thanked his father for this unique system. Meanwhile, Esil stirred faintly, trying to recover from her drained state. Suho glanced at her and decided to help. He pulled out a low-grade healing potion from the store window. However, the system notified him that the potion couldn't be shared directly with another person. Suho pondered this limitation briefly before deciding to try feeding it to her. Gently tilting Esil's head, Suho poured the potion into her mouth. Almost immediately, a warm, glowing light enveloped her body, the potion's effects beginning to restore her vitality. Suho observed her improvement and felt reassured. Beru, however, could not hide his disapproval. He regarded Esil as a useless demon and found Suho's generosity surprising. Despite Beru's remarks, Suho remained steadfast. He couldn't leave her in such a vulnerable state. Turning to Brocky, Suho instructed the massive beast to bring the corpses of the defeated demons to the portal leading to the Shadow Dungeon. Without hesitation, Brocky complied, dragging the lifeless forms behind him with ease. Meanwhile, Suho's attention shifted to the sword of the demon he had slain earlier. Picking it up, he examined the weapon briefly before securing it. Beru, observing Suho's actions, questioned why the young monarch wasn't heading directly to the Shadow Dungeon. Suho, however, had unfinished business. His gaze turned toward the chamber chambers where the Mistborns were bound. Walking slowly towards them, Suho's heart grew heavy. The Mistborns appeared to be in unbearable pain, their silent agony etched into their ethereal forms. Suho understood that there was only one way to release them from their suffering. Resolute, he activated his skill, Storm Slash, summoning a forceful and precise attack. The strike pierced through the Mistborns with a devastating power, ending their anguish in an instant. As the flames around them extinguished, Suho spoke softly to himself. This was the only way he could help them. At Seoul Station, the Hunter Association arrived to investigate the aftermath of the dungeon incident. Among the employees, there was tension and curiosity as they analyzed the situation. One of them reported their findings, detailing the corpses of thorn lizards and mistborns found within the field-type dungeon. However, the injuries on the dead hunters did not appear to be caused by monsters. Adding to the mystery, they had discovered a partially destroyed underground chamber, marked with deep sword slashes. One of the hunters pondered the findings, concluding that something else had been within the dungeon apart from the monsters. Among the group was Lim Do-gyun, who stood slightly apart. He had been the one to report the incident, but now his thoughts were elsewhere. As the employee approached him, questions arose. They asked Lim about the name Sung Suho, which appeared in the records of the collection team. Lim, caught off guard, hesitated before responding. He confirmed that Suho was a junior of his who had come to assist him during the dungeon raid. When asked about Suho's current whereabouts, Lim quickly formulated a response. He explained that after exiting the dungeon with him, Suho had gone to a safe place to hide, admitting that as E-rank hunters, there wasn't much else they could do but seek help from the Hunter Association. The employee nodded in understanding, commending Lim for making the right decision under the circumstances. They reassured him that he had followed protocol, making the best choice possible for an E-rank hunter. With that, the employee turned to their associates, instructing them to search thoroughly for any remaining traces in the area. Lim exhaled deeply, relieved to have avoided further questioning. His mind, however, was focused on Suho. Lim couldn't shake the thought that Suho was the one responsible for saving the surviving hunters. Although he didn't understand why Suho was hiding his true rank, he felt certain it wasn't for malicious reasons. Lim resolved to wait patiently until Suho was ready to share the truth. Suho, along with the others, finally arrived at the Shadow Dungeon. Esil had regained her senses, though her face carried the weight of everything she had just witnessed. She realized that the Shadow Monarch had departed from Earth to stop the impending invasion of the Outer Gods' armies. Beru, adding further details, revealed to Esil that their king, the Shadow Monarch, had sent him to Earth for one purpose, to release the seal of the young monarch. Yet Beru couldn't help but mention how Suho, being a prodigy beyond compare, had already broken his own seal before any intervention. Suho turned to Esil, narrowing his gaze, trying to place her. He knew her name but struggled to remember the details of their meeting. She confirmed that they had met during the tutorial he had gone through, a time distant in his mind. She reminded him of his promise back then, a promise that he wouldn't forget her. Yet for some reason, Suho found that the memories of those moments were oddly vague, as though hidden under a hazy fog, and then it clicked. A vivid fragment resurfaced in his mind. Suho recalled her presence while he climbed the floors of the demon castle. A soft chuckle escaped him as he remembered clearly. She was the demon who had surrendered the moment she laid eyes on him. The thought brought both amusement and a sense of nostalgia. Beru, as always, was blunt and unforgiving in his remarks. He criticized Esil for her lack of effort during what was supposed to be a test for Suho. Esil, clearly embarrassed, chose to remain silent, unable to defend herself. Shifting focus, Beru questioned Esil further, curious about her current weakened state. He demanded an explanation about what had happened in the demon realm to leave her in such a condition. Esil sighed, realizing that the time had come to share the full truth. Turning to Suho, she began to explain in detail. Esil recounted how the Shadow Monarch had once eradicated the Demon King and all the demon nobles, leaving the demon realm in peace. In the aftermath, her household had risen to prominence, becoming the most powerful family in the demon realm. They had waited patiently for decades, hoping to be summoned to serve once more in the demon castle. But the Shadow Monarch had never called upon them. Time moved on and life remained peaceful for them. Until half a year ago. It was then that the balance of the demon realm began to shift. Esil described how a magic power amplification stimulant known as Stardust had started to circulate among the demons. This stimulant, though powerful, brought with it corruption and chaos. The peace they had known for so long was slowly being torn apart. Hearing the name Stardust triggered something in Suho's mind. He recalled faint conversations, whispers among the demons he had fought earlier. During the battle, they had mentioned something about Stardust. Esil continued her story, her voice trembling as the painful memories resurfaced. She explained that while Stardust had little effect on high-ranked demons who already possessed great magic power, it was a dangerous opportunity for the weaker ones. For low-ranked demons, the stimulant allowed them to drastically increase their magic power without any cost. This newfound power turned into ambition. With the Shadow Monarch absent for a long time, the demons began to band together under a single goal: rebellion. They targeted the Ragnarök household, the protectors of the demon castle, who had been entrusted with this duty by the Shadow Monarch himself. What began as scattered uprisings quickly escalated into an all-out war. The Ragnarök household, though noble and strong, was unprepared for such betrayal. For half a year, they fought tirelessly to defend the demon castle. Their resolve remained unshaken, but the sheer numbers and desperation of the rebelling demons proved overwhelming. Slowly, the tides of war turned against them, and defeat became inevitable. Esil's voice wavered as she described what happened next. The demons did not stop at victory. They captured members of her household as prisoners of war and drained their blood. The blood of the pure-blood demon nobles, once a mark of their power and nobility, became fuel for the rebels. By drinking it, the demons grew stronger, their greed knowing no limits. Esil's father and the rest of her household fell as sacrifices. She too had been captured. Much of her strength had been stolen as her blood was drained repeatedly, leaving her weakened and broken. Her words carried guilt and sorrow as she admitted her shame. Everyone in her household had fought and died, but she alone had survived. Now, with the demon realm stolen and the demon castle lost, she was left wandering without purpose. Esil lamented that she no longer knew what to say to the Shadow Monarch, who had once trusted her family so deeply. Suho, instead of reprimanding her for surviving, he spoke with gratitude and resolve. He reminded her that she and her household had fought with everything they had, putting their lives on the line in loyalty to his father. He acknowledged their bravery and the weight they carried, promising that his father would have been proud of them. Suho then made a promise of his own. He thanked Esil for everything her family had done and vowed to help her. Together, he said, they would revive the Ragnarök household. Her burden would no longer be hers alone to carry. As Suho spoke, something shifted in Esil. A memory flashed in her mind, a distant moment with Jinwoo, the Shadow Monarch himself. Jinwoo had spoken of the fierce competition among the demon households and had pledged to help her family rise to become number one. The memory burned brightly in Esil's heart as she looked at Suho, the young monarch who now stood before her with the same determination. A notification flickered before Suho, confirming the importance of the moment that the last survivor of the pureblood demon nobles, Esil, expresses her thanks to you. Esil wiped her tears and with a soft but resolute voice, she corrected him. Her household name was Ragnarök. Another notification suddenly appeared before Suho, asking if he would recruit the Descendant of White Flames as his teammate. The sudden message stunned him, and he paused to consider. Could Esil be the second monarch's descendant? He wondered if this was because she was the last surviving pure-blooded demon noble. Without hesitation, Suho accepted the offer. The system responded immediately, confirming that he had recruited the White Flames' descendant as a companion. A new bond skill had been formed between Suho and Esil, connected through their shared connection. For Esil, a flurry of notifications overwhelmed her vision. She was startled and confused as a status screen appeared before her eyes, something she had never experienced before. Suho realized the system was visible to his companions as well, something he hadn't known earlier since Gray, his other companion, couldn't speak. Beru, who had been watching closely, seemed to grasp the situation instantly. He asked if this meant that Esil had now become the White Flame's descendant. Suho confirmed Beru's suspicion. He decided to test out the bond skill to see its effects. He turned to Esil, who, despite her fatigue, responded with determination, ready to proceed. The system acknowledged the activation of the bond skill, and suddenly, a surge of powerful energy crackled to life. The air around them vibrated with electricity as the transformation began. Suho felt the bond skill taking effect, his body resonating with the energy transfer. It was unlike anything he had experienced before. The sensation was overwhelming, but when the transformation settled, Suho marveled at the power that coursed through him. However, before he could fully grasp it, Esil collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath. She was completely drained of energy, unable to stand. The skill had used up every last bit of her strength. Suho reassured her to rest and recover, but he couldn't help but wonder how powerful this skill must truly be if it had consumed all of Esil's energy in one use. Esil, still on the ground, pondered over the nature of the skill. She realized it allowed her to transfer her power directly to Suho. Curious, Suho decided to test the attack himself. He clenched his fist and punched the nearby wall with all his strength. The impact left a dent in the surface, but it wasn't anything extraordinary. Beru, who had been observing the scene intently, remarked that the attack didn't appear much different from from Suho's usual strikes. Suho studied the outcome closely and agreed. Unlike Gray's bond skill, this one didn't seem particularly unique, at least not yet. Esil, still recovering on the ground, was dismayed. She couldn't believe that all of her energy had resulted in such a minor effect. Suho turned his attention back to the system window, trying to make sense of it. The bond skill showed a charge rate of 0%, and there was no information about how to charge it. Frustration crept in as he realized he had no idea how to unlock the skill's full potential. Beru approached Suho with a request. The Ant King sought permission to consume the carcasses of the demons Suho had brought into the Shadow Dungeon. Suho, however, declined, explaining that the bodies were intended for shadow extraction later. Realizing Suho had not yet attempted shadow extraction on the demons, Beru encouraged him to try it now. Suho extended his hand and gave the command that had raised countless soldiers before: arise. However, this time, the system notified him that shadow extraction could not be performed on the demons. The mana within them was contaminated, preventing their souls from being turned into shadow soldiers. Beru explained further, drawing on his knowledge of Suho's father, the Shadow Monarch. Even the Shadow Monarch had been unable to extract corrupted demons. Instead, he had controlled them through contracts, much like the Radiru household had done. Accepting this limitation, Suho allowed Beru to consume the carcasses. Grateful, Beru thanked his young monarch and began his feast. Listening quietly, Esil couldn't help but feel disheartened by the conversation. She muttered to herself, lamenting how they were labeled as tainted. Noticing her mood, Suho handed her a potion, offering it as a remedy for her exhaustion. Esil accepted the gift with gratitude, but a lingering guilt remained. She felt as though she had been nothing but a burden since joining Suho. Suho reassured her in his usual calm manner. Acknowledging that Esil had nowhere to stay, he generously offered her a sector of the city to call her own. Esil was overwhelmed by the gesture, her gratitude evident. She felt undeserving of such kindness, but was deeply touched by his words. Suho, with a soft laugh, reminded her that they were companions now, and that she shouldn't worry. The moment was interrupted by a piercing cry from Beru. Alarmed, Suho turned to see what had caused the sudden outburst. Beru, his voice laced with urgency, revealed startling news. From the memories of the demons he had consumed, he had uncovered a critical clue about the apostle of the Iterim. Brocky, Suho, Esil, and Gray sat in a line, their expressions serious as they waited for Beru's explanation. Beru began unraveling the details he had uncovered. He first explained the widespread presence of star powder, revealing its connection to both Earth and outer space. Mistborns, the magic beasts involved in its creation, were not native to Hell, but came from beyond the stars. Esil's shock was palpable as she realized the devastating reach of star powder wasn't confined to Hell alone. Suho, too, absorbed the revelation, noting the extraterrestrial origin of the Mistborns. Beru continued, outlining the critical link between the demons he had devoured and Brocky, a figure tied to the Hyena Guild operating in the Mount Guanak field. The demons had been sourcing humans from this guild, infecting them to transform into Mistborns. These creatures were then used as ingredients for star powder. Beru revealed that manufacturing wasn't limited to one location. Numerous star powder factories existed, hidden across various places. To summarize, Beru explained the sinister connection between three factions. The Hyena Guild kidnapped humans, the Reaper Guild transported them, and the factories processed them into ingredients for star powder. Overseeing this horrifying system was none other than the Iterim, orchestrating the collaboration of these factions. Suho listened intently, piecing the puzzle together. He connected this system to the larger invasion of the Iterim, realizing it was part of a broader strategy. Beru then dropped another bombshell. The system had a creator, a human who had designed the entire star powder manufacturing process. Suho's eyes widened in disbelief as Beru revealed this. The human responsible was the apostle of the Iterim, a figure hiding somewhere on Earth. The revelations didn't end there. Beru disclosed that the apostle wasn't working alone. A human accomplice had been aiding this operation, and this person was none other than Minsung, the vice guild master of the Reaper Guild. Beru concluded by stating that investigating Minsung would undoubtedly lead them closer to uncovering the apostle of the Iterim. Outside the Reaper Guild headquarters, a group of reporters gathered, their cameras flashing and voices echoing as they anticipated the appearance of Minsung. The atmosphere buzzed with tension, fueled by the controversy surrounding the guild. When Minsung finally emerged, he was flanked by a team of bodyguards, their imposing presence forming a barrier between him and the eager crowd of reporters. Questions poured in relentlessly, each reporter attempting to get their moment with the controversial figure. One reporter asked about the investigation conducted by the Hunters Association, Probing into its conclusion, Minsung, calm and composed, responded with a statement that the inquiry had ended without any allegations. His confident demeanor suggested he had nothing to hide. Another reporter pressed harder, questioning if Minsung had truly been unaware of the Hyena Guild's actions. The guild, which had been supported by the Reaper Guild, was accused of kidnapping civilians. This was a significant accusation, but the questions didn't stop there. Another inquiry pointed out the numerous deaths of hunters in the Seoul Station field, a location managed by the Reaper Guild, and demanded Minsung's thoughts on the matter. Minsung addressed the crowd with what appeared to be sincerity. He claimed the Reaper Guild had always strived to bring order to the chaos that had engulfed the world after the cataclysm 2 years ago. His support for the Hyena Guild had been based on the guild's composition of mostly D-rank hunters, who were believed to serve the public good efficiently. Regarding the Seoul Station field, he described it as a space meant to provide opportunities for new hunters to gain experience. With emotion building in his voice, Minsung expressed regret over the unintended consequences of his decisions. His eyes welled up with tears as he apologized for the lives lost and the trouble caused under his management. He appeared genuinely remorseful, emphasizing that his actions, though well-intentioned, had resulted in unforeseen tragedies. As Lee Minsung walked away, surrounded by his bodyguards, the reporters continued to analyze his statements. Their conversations shifted from skepticism to admiration. They speculated aloud whether the Reaper Guild was innocent after all. One reporter pointed out that the Hunters Association hadn't raised any allegations, while another remarked on the good deeds the guild had supposedly done. The conversation concluded with some reporters even hailing the Reaper Guild as heroes. From a distance, Minsung overheard their words. A wide grin spread across his face as he silently reveled in his success. His thoughts reflected his confidence and cunning. To him, delivering an act like that was effortless, a skill honed from his past as one of Asia's greatest stars. He felt proud of how smoothly he had convinced the crowd. Reflecting on the Hunters Association, Minsung smirked, thinking how easily they had let him go. Clearly unaware of his true involvement, he hid the fact that he was the source of the star powder circulating in the market, confident his secret remained safe. Meanwhile, Suho was observing Minsung closely, hidden behind a wall. His eyes narrowed as he studied the man who had become the focus of his suspicions. Turning to Beru, Suho questioned whether Minsung carried the aura of the Itarim. Beru replied with certainty that he could not sense any of the Itarim's influence within Minsung. This revelation left Suho thoughtful. If Minsung wasn't under their control, then his actions were entirely his own. Suho's resolve strengthened, and he prepared to confront the man directly, intent on uncovering the truth behind his involvement. Before Suho could step forward, Beru swiftly stopped him. The loyal servant spoke with urgency, reminding Suho of the dangers ahead. Beru acknowledged Suho's past victories against formidable enemies, but warned that this time the stakes were different. The mana radiating from Minsung was overwhelming, a force far beyond what Suho could currently handle. As Beru's warning echoed in Suho's mind, Minsung's instincts flared. He paused mid-step, his sharp senses picking up on the subtle disturbance. His bodyguards quickly noticed his hesitation and asked if something was wrong. Minsung brushed it off, claiming it was nothing, though he remained alert. Beru, still holding Suho back, emphasized the gravity of the situation. Suho might have faced countless foes before, but Minsung's power was on another level entirely. For now, the confrontation would have to wait. Lee Minsung arrived at his designated place, a luxurious and cozy hotel. The environment was meticulously prepared, with fine food and drinks arranged to his liking. Seated comfortably with a woman in his arms, Minsung exuded confidence and self-satisfaction. He reflected on his recent success, finding amusement in how easily he had swayed public opinion with nothing more than his acting skills. Picking up his phone, he scrolled through the headlines that celebrated his innocence. Articles praised him as a hero, highlighting the transparency of the Grim Reaper Guild's profits and his continued good deeds despite the Hyena Guild incident. As he enjoyed the evening, a woman approached him, her presence commanding the attention of the room. She acknowledged Minsung as the hero of the hunter industry, her tone polished but sharp. Taking control of the atmosphere, she dismissed everyone else from the room, leaving just the two of them. The woman's internal thoughts betrayed her outward politeness. She recognized Minsung's arrogance, shaped by a life of privilege as a child star. Even after the cataclysm, when he awakened as an A-rank hunter, his pride had been bruised. The attention that once revolved around him shifted to his driver, who became one of Korea's rare S-rank hunters. This twist of fate had flipped Minsung's world, placing him in a lower hierarchy for the first time. Yet, over time, his driver joined the Grim Reaper Guild, allowing Minsung to maneuver his way back into power. Turning the conversation to business, the woman brought up her interest in stardust. She expressed her desire to purchase a large supply, pushing the conversation toward her needs. Minsung, however, reminded her of the recent destruction of one of the stardust factories and the disruption in its distribution. Supplies were limited, and fulfilling her request was challenging. Unfazed, the woman pressed him further, confident in his resourcefulness. Minsung reluctantly agreed to discuss the matter with his business partner, though the strain on his patience was evident. As the conversation ended, Minsung's mind wandered to the individual responsible for managing his supply chain. Lately, this person had stopped responding to his orders, creating a bottleneck in his operations. Frustrated, Minsung considered his next steps, realizing that resolving this issue was now a priority. Thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed it. Until next time, happy watching.